Hey everyone, you're leaving 25% of your potential close rate and $1 million in EBITDA on the table. Most founders, well, they're trapped in a price war because they're selling services instead of matching their buyer's identity. If you are not using the matching principle, you are leaving 25% of your potential close rate and millions of dollars in EBITDA on the table. I'm Doug C. Brown, and today, my guest, Michèle, is going to reveal how to stop being a commoditized vendor and start being a high value ally. Let's double your margins and let's dive right in. This is the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Hey, Michèle, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
I am delighted to be here, Doug. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Now, for everybody's knowledge, what part of Canada are you in?
Vancouver, West Coast, BC, just 2.5 hours north of Seattle.
One of the nicest weather patterns in Canada. That's what I believe anyways, or I've heard.
Apparently, we are apparently known as the California of Canada because our weather patterns are relatively mild. Yes.
Yes.
But rather wet. We do live in a rainforest.
Well, if it helps, I'm in New Hampshire, freezing to death. So and we've had so much snow this year. So, I want to talk about one of, I think probably one of our favorite topics, and it's value, selling on value, and how value, and pay attention, folks, because selling on value improves your close rates, a big, big, big deal. Because if you improve your close rates without having to put any more money in, guess what happens to your margins?
Yeah.
So if we take your close rate from 25% to 50% and you had the same amount of leads, guess what happens to your margins, right? So your EBITDA goes, wee, thank you. And your valuation goes up and you have way more operational cash flow to work with. So, but here's the thing, Michèle, you and I were talking earlier and I said to you, here's the thing about value. People really don't understand what it is. They think they do, but so I'm going to defer to you. What is value?
Well, from my perspective, and again, I operate primarily through the lens of working with services, less about product. So much of what I'm going to say it'll resonate for both, but it tends to be a little bit more services oriented. Product essentially is something that is a value creation between both parties. Or sorry, value is a value creation between both parties, not product. And what I mean by that is value is something that the buyer experiences. And this is where I think a lot of vendors think that they're adding value, creating value, increasing value, and they're wanting to do that. And yeah, you can want to do that, as I like to say, and you can do your best to do that. But at the same time, the buyer is the only one who gets to determine what the value actually is to them and how much it's valued by them. The key in the relationship is that you want both parties to equally experience value. Yes. Which is getting a result out of that relationship that is important to them, whatever that might be. Some people value might be more in the relationship than in the specific outcome. Some people are looking for a very specific outcome. So value is always a little bit different for everybody.
That was a lot of stuff there. I'm gonna break that down because it seems so like, oh, that's conversational. But what I just heard was you got to sell equal value. So that's win-win, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to win, they got to win. It's the buyer's experience. So and folks, you've heard me say this a lot. Mm-hmm. It's the perception of their experience, right? And so I want to come back to that one. And then some people will value relationships versus outcomes. So relationships are the personal return on investment. Outcomes are the business return on investment. If you're not addressing both, you're missing sales.
Yes.
And so let me go back to the perception because, men can relate to this and I think women can too. But men, we try to do something to impress the woman and we're like, oh yeah, she's going to love this. And we go and try it. And she's like, oh, dude, what is wrong with you? right? And
Hmm.
our perception is this is value, but her perception is that's not value.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I can hear a lot of men probably chuckling right now because
Probably some women too.
yeah. Women probably hilariously laughing, right?
Ah.
And I remember one time my wife, Justina, she she came to me one day and I was talking to my daughters, our daughters now, talking to the daughters, and she came to me and she said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." And she goes and brings me into her a room and she shuts the door and she goes, "You can't say that to daughters." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She's like you're talking to sons. And I said, "Well, I don't get it." She goes, and she literally takes her hand, Michelle, and she puts one hand on the back of the hand like an Italian grandmother, and she goes, "You're thinking like a man." And and I was like, "Oh." And it clicked in my head. It's like, okay, my messaging is not being conveyed as value to our
Yeah.
daughters because I'm thinking like a man, and the perception is no, hell no.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, what I want you all to get out of that, my mistake is that if you're walking into a business meeting and you're doing this with the buyer and you're thinking one way and the buyer's thinking the other way, like Michelle just said, the perception of this, or they value the personal return on investment higher than the business return on investment, and you're just pounding away on the numbers, like, look, we can save you 27%,
Hmm.
we can increase this by this, and they're thinking, that doesn't matter to me,
Hmm.
then the value is
Exactly.
low.
Right. I think the important thing here is there is, your business results have to be in the game. They have to be strong enough in order for this to have any, you have to be good enough at what you do to be able to be even in position to enhance value or to add more value or create more value in the dynamic, right? So the piece is important that you yourself, when you're in the delivery position, you need to make sure that whatever you're doing is going to create results, business results that make sense. Otherwise, you're not bringing enough to the table to start. But beyond that, then it's about what is the buyer actually wanting to buy beyond the business results. What is it that what that is most important to them? Because remember, those business results are actually driving to something else. They're wanting something else from those business results. And it's when we can tap into that and better understand what is it that they want from the relationship with you in creating the results that they are paying for, if you will, if they want something more, something different. So it's access to something else. It might be that they are looking to, if they want to make more money, sure, okay, you want to make more money, but why? What is it about more money that is important to you? What is it that it's going to give you that you don't have access to right now? So that's what they're actually buying. If it's about saving money, for example, then it's the same thing. If you're saving money, what does that mean? Where would that investment savings go else? Where would you put it elsewhere and why? Why is that important? What are you trying to achieve? In other cases, it might be around process and simplicity and just like make my life easier because I got too many headaches. Now they might be paying for something different that's going to create that. But again, it's like, what are you trying to get access to? So this is where value, I think, is really, it's a huge opportunity for any vendors to better understand. And I think what I want to highlight here is the concept of what I call the matching principle. And very often as the supplier or the vendor, if you will, the one providing the services or the product, very often we try to create more value from the client perspective. And we're trying to understand what it is that they're trying to buy, what it is that they want. We often take ourselves out of that equation. And I think what I want to suggest here is that if you as the provider of the services are not also experiencing value from that relationship, if you're not also excited about it, then there's probably something wrong in the value that you're experiencing. You might be getting paid very well, but you still might be rolling your eyes when the phone rings. Or you might be thinking, God, this is a big headache. Or the work that I'm doing, that the way they value the work that I'm doing doesn't feel good to me. Right. And that's a whole different other side of it. It doesn't feel good to me. Now, if you're the provider, and even though they think you're doing an amazing job and they love everything you're doing, but for you, it's not feeling like you're getting a lift, then your energy coming into that relationship is going to be less enthusiastic than it might be if you were feeling like your work was valued, right? So if you feel, you can feel valuable, but not feel valued. And I think that's the piece that a lot of us forget in that relationship.
Yeah, and I think that's so imperative in in building a relationship. Like we because if we just get a little bit of value every single time we're in a relationship, we sort of like it kind of becomes a usable relationship
Mm-hmm.
when we need it. But if we feel valued in a relationship, we develop huge trust
Mm-hmm.
versus
Mm-hmm.
just a transactional process. So
Mm-hmm.
when we're building that transactional process on the other side, then they're going to treat us like a vendor. If we're building a valued relationship, they're going to treat
Mm-hmm.
us like an ally, a friend. You're going to be
Yeah.
the go-to every single time they think of that. Now, folks, I want you to kind of think about this. If every time they had something that you could do, even if they didn't know you could do it, they call you for it, how many more repeat sales would you get through the year?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you have to pay for that? Yeah, nothing. You your cost of acquisition is huge on that
Yeah.
type of sale. And I think the I want to come back to the why thing, Michelle, but value starts from number one, the connection, the pre-connection. Like, how are you creating this? It's not just in the sale itself. It also has to be in your messaging, your marketing, your upfront positioning, your branding all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And so many companies, actually, I was just having a conversation about an hour ago, Michelle, with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, I'm generating all these leads and my conversion rate is 60%. I said, on all these leads, they go, no, no, no. When I talk to them. So, like, if you do 100 leads, how many conversations are you having? No, no, like 1,000 leads. Then I have one conversation. I'm like, okay, here we are. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we're
Mm-hmm.
generating leads. We're not generating buyer quality leads. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to there's no perception of value
Mm-hmm.
in that process.
That's right.
And
Well, what
so
is the Warren Buffett quote? Price is what you pay, and value is what you get.
ah,
And in the absence of value, this is Joe Pulmary. He says, in the absence of value, it always comes down to price.
yeah, yeah. Price, it used to be convenience in price.
Mm-hmm.
So it used to be like serve. So the perception of how people look at value is firstly, what do they value? And then there were categories, right? Like, and then the bottom two categories used to be convenience and price, but it was
Right.
price first, then convenience. But what I've noticed in the data is it's shifted. Convenience has actually moved toward the top of the perception of value.
Mm-hmm.
So, service, selection, convenience is like number three now, where it used to be like number five,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost creeped into the number two spot. Why is that the case? Because people now and the pandemic thing, everything has shifted where it's become less obvious on to me
Yeah.
anyways. Like everybody's trying to like take the human communication out of this. So as they're doing that, people are going, well, crap, there's nothing there. Let's just, what's the
There's
most
no point.
convenient route, right?
Right. Well, this is where it gets, I often share the example of an HB pencil, a very basic pencil, something we use in elementary school when we're learning how to write. The
I never
pencil,
used
it's,
pencils in elementary school.
well, I think kids these days are using typewriters or no, typewriters. I'm like dating myself here. They're
I don't
using
even, I
keyboards,
think we
right?
just had raw
Or
lead. I don't
touchpads.
even think we had the wood wrapped around it. That's how old I am.
There you go. But what I'm saying is the HB pencil itself, there's the basic pencil itself. You could buy it at a dollar store. You could buy it at, another local store in your neighborhood that's maybe a little more boutiquey, or you could buy the same type of pencil in a specialty art store or pen shop, for example.
Yep,
And that the buyer of that pencil, depending on where they buy that pencil, is going to put a different value on that pencil,
that's right.
right? So the buyer who's buying at the dollar store, they just need a quick piece of a quick tool to do what they need to do. The pencil is fine. Their identity is not connected or attached to anything more. They're just buying a pencil. For the people who are buying in a local boutique, for example, just a local one that you can walk to, they maybe have values around, they value or appreciate supporting local businesses, and they value the ability to walk there because they get their 10,000 steps in per day or what have you, but they're going to have a different reason for going there. Maybe they like the owner and they want to support them, or your kids go to school together, something like that. Now they're going to pay a marginal premium for that pencil. It's not going to be the same price as at the dollar store. Now you go into the next level, which would be an art store where you've got an artist who values the pencil, and maybe that same exact lead is wrapped with a slightly different texture, or it's available in the pen store, or in the art store, and they are inspired by what else. So they're going to go to the pen store or the art store, and they're going to pay yet again a little extra because of what it represents for them. They're buying it at that particular store, which connects with their identity. So the same thing happens in services. We just don't think of it that way. The same exact thing, how we value the vendor, the person who's providing the services, or the company that's providing the services, how we value them is going to depend very much on what it is that we want to buy. Right?
That, if you didn't write that down with your number 2 lead pencil, I'm dating myself. The that was worth this whole podcast episode. So here's the thing. I want to go right back to that. The identity that they attach to their belief,
Yeah.
of themselves.
That's right.
If you're not getting to that understanding, folks, you are leaving so much on the table.
And this is where we see, just to tap in there, we see this with services a lot, because we have, so many of my clients will say, I've got these great clients, but they still treat me like a commodity, and I don't know why. Like, they're really happy, everything's great. And it's because there's a mismatch, perhaps in worldview. Maybe there's a mismatch in terms of how they think that you provide the services, or their experience of your services. It's not that you're doing anything wrong, they're just not excited.
Yeah.
It's fine. And so those clients, even though they're happy, they're not what I would call they will never become gushing fans. They will never become advocates. The best that they will ever be is, sure, you could call my guy, he's great. That's it. That's the best you're going to get. Where as soon as you start matching on identity and worldview, like when you can see and appreciate what they value and appreciate, and when they also experience that through you, now there's a matching process that elevates the whole experience and also differentiates it.
Yep.
Because they can't get that with someone else. The shared worldview, the shared perspective, the identity that their experience with you nurtures in them, that says, hey, this is the kind of person I am. I work with people like this. And if you're not creating any kind of environment where they can identify that or experience that, then you're nothing more than a commoditized service, which is why you're experiencing these clients they're happy, but they're probably at risk if something better comes along. They're just there for convenience at this point. They've been with you a while, and it's just harder to change. But if something really good comes along, they probably will.
Folks, if you aren't identifying this identity attached thing, and by the end, we'll reveal how. But if you're not doing this, you are missing out on so much. I'll give you. So we were over, and we took a trip over to Europe recently, and my wife had not really been to London much. So we were in London, and I said, let's go to Harrods. And she said, well, what's that? And I said, well, it's this fancy store that people go to, right? It's like, you might see some, elite movie stars or whatever, in this place. And I'm like, everything is elevated in price. It's the pencil store you walk in that's wrapped, that you might spend, $1 for the pencil, and then the dollar store for, a pack of 5. You go to Harrods, it's going to be $50. Right.
Because it comes in a Harrods bag.
Exactly. Right. So we walked in, and we're walking around, and I'm like, let's go up to the dress section and things like that. Because for me, a dress at 32,000, pounds or US dollars or whatever, I don't know. I have a little bit of a challenge going, man, there's value there for me, like in a $32,000 dress, right? But there are people in there spending tens of thousands of dollars on dresses. And so my wife looked at me, she goes, I don't get it.
Hmm.
And I said, well, I said, sweetheart, I know you wouldn't do this because I
Hmm.
know who you are. You would look for the shopping value of, like, if the
Hmm.
$10,000 dress was like $1,500, it's not because she's cheap. She would go, oh, that's a deal, and I could,
Hmm.
resell the dress down the line for the same amount of money or more, even after I wore it, right? And so what I came to understand in Harrods was, why do people shop at Harrods? Number one, they can, right? Some of them, that's their identity. I can shop here, spend $12,000 on a dress. I don't care. That's the person I am. I'm just going to spend
Hmm.
that kind of money. The second category was, they want to be that. So
Right.
they're kind of walking in saying, "Hey, I want to be this person." So I was there. And then the third, and there's probably more categories, but the third category is the people who go, "I shopped at Harrods." They
Hmm.
want to impress everybody and feel that identity of being able to do that. And I'm sure there's others. The point I
It
wanted
helps them associate with something they either want or already do believe about themselves,
exactly,
right?
right?
Hmm.
And so my question for everybody is, do you know your client's identity that well or even better than what we're
Hmm.
describing?
Hmm. What's important to them? And also, what's important to you? Who are you? Because very often we see, especially in services, people are trying to serve a community that they don't understand, that isn't part of who they are and how they think and what they relate to. And they have no experience with that community, but that community represents perhaps higher value tickets or higher margins or what have you, right? So for them, they think, oh, that would be a great group to serve
Right.
because that strategically makes sense. Sure, strategically, but it doesn't make sense if you're not able to connect with that community in a way that allows you to be even more valuable to them than the average vendor or supplier.
Yeah, and it works both ways, folks. And I'm glad you brought that up, Michelle, because, like, if I was going to, let's say, go sell to people who are working on oil rigs or, industrial equipment and the big construction process, and I walk in there in a finely tailored suit, and I'm speaking like I would
Mm-hmm.
to them, to the CEO of, I don't know, pick a major, CBS television or
Mm-hmm.
some, white collar position. They're not going to value me.
No, they're probably going to judge you.
But absolutely. and
Yes.
and 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 not always in a
Yeah.
positive manner. I would say it's going to be on the negative side of that, right? And so it doesn't make these people who work in that field less valuable or less intelligent than other people are. It's
Right.
just that identity and valuation that Michelle is bringing forth. You've got to be able to morph in that concept. Like, I love both sides of that fence, right? I can go to
Hmm.
one side or the other side, be perfectly fine getting in and being all greasy and
Yeah.
I grew up that way, right? I also can be on the other side with the CEO of that, of Revlon, and sit down and talk through that, right? That type of thing.
Hmm.
So what I want people to understand is that identification or that identity that's attached.
Hmm.
And if they don't get, and I keep harping on this because to me, that's the key to this whole conversation, and being able to do what you said on the matching side of that matching principle, right? If that, folks, that's the key. Like, write that down. If you didn't write that down, please, because what
Hmm.
Michelle's giving you is not gold, it's not platinum, it's actually the universe. It's like, when you figure out that, and you can
Hmm.
ask these questions, like the Toyota principle around they used to ask 5 whys to get to the root cause, right?
Hmm.
If we apply the same question and we ask, why is that important to you? Why do you value that? What about that is meaningful? And if you
Hmm.
ask these type of questions, they will give you answers as long as you're in rapport. And that is revealing
Uh-huh.
that identity attached.
Right. You said something really important there, as long as you have rapport. If you ask those questions and you don't have rapport, they will think you're prying, and they will feel like it's an insincere relationship that's being built. So that's such an important part at the beginning, right? Thank you for saying that, Doug.
Let's run down that road a little more because I think people get that in concept, but I don't think
Mm,
they like I will say that when I was that working mostly in the white collar and then we went into the trade space again, and we were going into manufacturing again, which I grew up in, right? My dad owned an
right.
industrial machinery repair company,
Mm-hmm.
electricians,
Mm-hmm.
right? I grew up in. I know these people and how they think and act. My brother's a master electrician, so like
Right.
it was my family. And then eventually I got away from that and I came back to that space.
Mm,
And I didn't get away from it on purpose. It just sort of, my pathway in life sort of just took me out of one industry into another.
mm-hmm.
When I tried to go back into that industry, I had to reset myself to
Yeah.
understand what you were just conveying.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was walking in, people liked me as a person, but I could tell we weren't connecting on what was valuable to them. So I had to step back and go, okay, it's me. I know it's me. How do I adjust? So I actually called friends of mine who are in this, doing this very successful. I said, pick apart what I'm doing here because I'm disconnected and I know I'm disconnected. I need to
Yeah.
be able to get to the identity, as you said, attached, the matching principles, understand what's driving them, why it's driving them,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can relate to them not as a business to business only, but as a personal
Right.
return on the investment that they're
Yeah.
looking for too.
Mm-hmm. Human to human. Absolutely. It's a big part of it's a big part of the relationship. And I think we see a lot where people say, I am their trusted advisor. I want to be their trusted advisor. This is a phrase I hear a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and the only way that you're going to build that trust is people need to be seen, they need to be heard, and they need to be understood. And what that means to see them is not just to look at them and tell someone, see that someone has brown hair and is wearing a suit. It means to see in their eyes what's not being said. There's a sentiment in the eyes are such a powerful way of connecting with someone. So rapport in a lot of ways, when you see someone, you can see what's happening for them in their we might call meta language, their body language. What are they bringing into the space in their energy? So the more sensitive to that you can be, the better. When you understand them, they feel understood when we repeat back or when we say, "This is what I'm hearing. Am I getting that right? Is this what you're trying to say?" Or this is how I'm receiving that. Is this is what you were intending? So it allows for them to feel like you've been paying attention. Um, and to be heard, when they're heard, again, it's that piece that says, there's certain words that you say. It's not the words that you say, it's the intention behind the words. And so, how often are we in situations where that's not what I said? No, but it is what you said. Those are the exact words that you said. That's not what I said. Right? That's what I'm talking about when we're talking about being heard. If someone feels heard, regardless of what the words are that they're using, the intention behind the words has been received or respected or heard, right? So these are the key pieces around rapport. I think that as we start getting into a relationship, the more we can allow the space for that to develop, and it doesn't take a long time. It can only, you can do that in just a few minutes, 5, 6 minutes. It doesn't need a long time, but it needs enough time that there's a foundation that says, okay, this person is present. They're here. They see me. There's not a whole bunch of distraction going on. We can move forward.
I want to dig into this because Michelle, you're an expert in this whole area, right?
Mm.
Well, tell people what you do because I don't think people really.
Thank you. Well, I focus on differentiation specifically, which is helping businesses, particularly in services, move out of commoditization and create relationships that are of greater value. So it's also based in bringing authentic value to the table and making sure that the work is meaningful for the service provider as well.
And so you're producing those results that are manifesting themselves into better quality days, relationships, but also way more money.
Way more money. It's always way more money because
Yeah.
ultimately when you understand the matching principle, when you create that, margins increase. Like you said, clients become more sticky. They become an advocate. They refer better business. They refer actually higher quality business as well. So it always
Yes.
results in more money. Yeah.
When you have that matching principle, I think it just builds so much trust
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's why people are comfortable doing. We all like to do that. We like to give when we're getting what
Yes.
we need. It's just a human need. I really think when we come down, we want to contribute
Yeah, we
to
do.
to
There,
to
yes, and there's an and in my work for that. Yes, everybody wants to contribute, and we also want to know that our work matters. We
yeah.
want to know that our contribution is valued. And this is something we see all the time. And this is not my zone where I play, but in terms of leadership and teams and whatnot, employees they know they're good at what they do. They know they're bringing great work to the table. They know that, but it's not being valued or appreciated, and they're not getting the feedback loop. So even though they know they're good at what they do, they know they're bringing great work to the table, they're not getting the feedback that tells them that their work is appreciated or valued. And so that creates distance, that creates dissonance in the system. And the same things happen when you are buying anything from a supplier, whether it's a product or a service. You can feel like you're contributing in a really meaningful way. You could know that your work is really valuable and meaningful. And if you're not getting that feedback back in some form in a way that's meaningful for you or validates it for you, it doesn't have to be overt, and it's not always money, right? It's something else that says, hey, there's something here that's feeding me too in this
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And leaders in whatever capacity, whether you're leading a team of one yourself or more, this is so important to have that feedback loop. Clearly, studies overwhelmingly show that money is a driver, but appreciation and feeling valued and validated is a way bigger
Yeah.
driver.
Yeah. You want to
And
work hard when you know that your work is valued, right?
yeah, because we all want to be on a team that
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
appreciates us. And that's where you see winning teams like who are not just winning teams, they're actually winning teams of people who are helping each other in other ways of just the mission of the team, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if this goes back to our tribal influences early on where you needed to rely on the tribe. I'm not sure the etymology of it, if you will. I do know one thing, and I want to back this up what Michèle is saying. Oprah Winfrey said the number one question that somebody asks her when she comes off an interview with them, and it doesn't matter if it's the president of a country, a widely known movie star or whatever, someone who's had extreme fame and success, they tend to ask the same question after the interview. They take off the microphone or whatever, and they lean over to
Oh,
Oprah and they go, "How'd I do?"
yeah. Yeah.
And when I first heard this, I'm like, "Holy wow!" Because
Mm-hmm.
like these are people who have reached places that many people would validate as success,
Yeah.
but they're asking the same question that our people that we're talking to on a daily basis are asking. How did I do? Which is mean they're looking to be validated on what's not seen, what's not heard, what they're feeling, right? All of those things, the three
Mm-hmm.
things that you said. And you know what the number one question I get when people get off this podcast is?
How'd I do?
How'd I do?
Yep.
And I'm
I
like,
also have a podcast. How'd I
exactly, right.
do?
So, and I know that. So I
Mhm.
was wondering on your side, is that the
Yep.
same question that they ask, right? And
Did you
and it's
get
like,
what you want? How'd I do? Did I serve your cause? That's not their language, but that's the question.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, well, we have a decent podcast audience, but you know, I'm not Oprah Winfrey on as far as the reach
Yeah.
goes. I
Yeah.
will be there someday. So potentially. But we all have that need to do
Hmm.
this. We all, and I think this comes from our childhood, safety, security,
Right.
love,
Oh,
affection,
for
et cetera,
sure.
right? We all want our parents, or our caretakers like, hey, how did I do? Hey, you did amazing,
Yeah.
right?
So here's where this gets challenging, right? When you're in, particularly in a services relationship, how many providers of services actually ask their clients, how'd I do?
Oh gosh, I tell them
They're
every
afraid to,
time. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They're afraid to, and they'll do paper surveys, once a month or once a quarter rather, or after every meeting, they'll send a quick "How'd I do" survey electronically.
yeah,
Typically, they will do that, and they may or may not get responses that are valuable, but they're never getting the eye to eye "How'd I do" answer.
yeah.
What do you most appreciate about this relationship? So the thing about that question is it's a scary question for some, for many, as a provider to ask a client because they're thinking, well, what if I'm not? What if I'm not providing what they need and want? What might the answer be and how will I deal with that? Right? And so there's this is a lot of the work that I do is I help make sure that that value creation is not just delivered but also validated on both sides so that each party knows, and that's what creates a truly remarkable relationship, a differentiated relationship as well, because the matching principle comes into play not just one way. You actually, as a provider, can say, how'd I do? Ask that question and be ready for what comes.
Okay, folks, this is going to sting a little bit for some of you, but I'm going to actually double down on this. What am I not? Right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Yeah, we don't want to feel it, but think about the insanity of not knowing that, and you're losing deals, you're losing
Yeah.
relationships that they don't even want to leave you,
Right.
but for some reason they left. If you don't know the answer to that, like, there's two things. Number one, if you lose a deal, ask them why,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you
Mm-hmm.
don't ask them why, you're not going to know, and you'll keep repeating the same mistake over and over
Right.
again. So, what if I'm not? Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
aren't what you should be saying, but you actually are that, but you're not conveying it. And so you're
Mm-hmm.
losing deals. Remember, you paid for the marketing money. You paid to be there. You've paid for
Yeah.
all of this stuff, time, energy, money, labor, all this stuff. And if it's just getting washed away because you don't know why, well, so if you think about it, you've got to be able to look at your own self on your own business return on an investment, your own personal return on investment, and apply that into what you're doing on interactions to get that matching principle as much as you're
Mm-hmm.
doing it on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I know
Mm-hmm.
it can be a little bit painful, and we all have childhood wounds, and we all have things that we don't want to look at, but hey, come on.
It's true. And it's true. And I think, there's a lovely way to ask that question. If you're already in a relationship, you can ask simple questions like, what's working? Like in our relationship, what are you appreciating? What are you valuing? What is working in our relationship for you? That's an easy one. And hopefully we're already asking that question. The second part of that question is, how can we make this relationship even more valuable for you? So you're not asking what you're doing wrong. You're just asking for where the value gaps are. How can we make this relationship even more valuable, even more effective, even more helpful? And so there's already a foundation. Even in that simple question, there's already a foundation that says, yeah, I'm being helpful. This relationship is already serving you. But we can do more, and we want to know how we can be more or do more for you. And it's just highlighting an opening that says, hey, there's more opportunity. We can always be better. So that's a great way to ask that question because there's two parts actually in that. What you're doing there is you're highlighting that you're already valuable. So part of that messaging says this is already working. So you're solidifying that it's already working. That's really important. The second part says, I want to improve, right? The thing that you're not doing, if you're saying, what are we doing wrong? What you're doing there is actually pointing attention to the things that they are irritated by, the things that, and so they're going to frame that whole question around the negative. And so now you've actually, that's why that question is so scary for people, because the minute you open it with that question, you're pointing to the negative or the places in the relationship where they're unhappy with the service. And now they're going to remember that. So of course you don't want to ask that question. But if you ask it slightly differently, how can we be even better? Now they're thinking about potential solutions and problems. They're not thinking about all the things you're doing wrong. They're thinking about what would I like? It's a different frame, same question.
I want all of you to take a minimum of $10,000 and send a check to Michelle. Like, oh my gosh, what I wrote down, like, what's working? How do we make it even better, more valuable to you? Because it's the same question as what's not working. They're going to tell you what's not working.
Yeah.
But they're going to do it, and they're focused now on a dopamine hit versus a different chemical, cortisol, production. And follow-up question to that. Once they tell you what that is, if we just simply said, well, if I was to do this or accomplish this, would that work better for you? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or something. So give me the last follow-up question from your perspective.
Yeah, it could be. That's fine. Like if we did that for you, what would that mean for you, or why is that important? Or an even better question can be, what might that look like? Or if you were to experience that, what might that look like? Because now you're trying to get a sense of what they're envisioning in their imagination. Because if you say, sure, I'll go do that, they've said, here's what's missing. And you go, great, I'll go do that. I'm going to go this way because that's what my brain takes me to. And they're thinking they want you to go this way.
This way.
Different solution.
Yep.
Same, like, so what you want to do is check in to make sure that your picture of the solution is the same. So what might that look like, or how might the things be different? So get inside their head, because very often what they're trying to do is provide you with the solution to the outcome that they want, rather than just the outcome that they want. And what you're trying to do is find out what the outcome is that they're looking for, what's the result that they want. Because if you can do that, now you can figure out within your own system how to create that result. That's not going to take you off some wild tangent that's like, oh my gosh, that's going to be so expensive and we're not equipped to do that. So the answer is likely going to be more solution oriented or process oriented, right? And all you want to do is find out what it is that they're trying to achieve, so that you can then create your own way of getting there and say, okay, I see what you're doing. I see what you're saying. If we were to do something like this and get you there, would that be okay? Now you're co-creating,
Right.
And actually helping them, because you can say things like, given the system that we have, or given the way we're set up, we'd really be set up for success if we did it this way and we'd still get you there. How would that be? And now they're like, oh yeah, that's fine. I just want to get there. I don't really care how you do it. Right? So what you want to avoid in your business is creating new tangents that are outside your core system, that are then now you're decreasing margins substantially. This is where margins get hit really hard, because you're adding things to your system that are very expensive because they're not built into the core, where you can actually probably get to the same place using the same system, staying within the same.
Yeah, it's the power
lineup
of questioning. And the reality is, by the way, folks, they want to answer this question, and I'll tell
they
you
do.
why. Their limbic system, fight flight system in there, there's a part of our brain in that limbic system that wants to conserve energy at all cost. And so they want to give you the answers because they don't even know they're thinking this, but just physiologically or anatomically, your brain wants to conserve the energy. That's why we go into flight or fight really quickly. So that part of the brain is going to want to give the answer because they want to conserve the energy. And if they conserve the energy on that and they get the outcome, that they're moving ahead much faster. So, if you're like, well, okay, I get the power of questioning. No, 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 no. This is like, I said earlier that part of the podcast was worth it alone. This, I think, is equal to, or maybe even a little more elevated in my perception, but than what it is. So, and I'm going to leave on this high note unless you have something, because Michelle, I want to know, people are going to want to know how to get a hold of you.
Oh, thank you.
Um, because some of them I know are have pulled over the side of the road and they're like looking around like dazed and confused, like, oh, I get this, but oh gosh, how do I actually accomplish this?
Mm, thank
And
you.
so, folks, here's your
Yeah, well,
contact information.
yes, I'm very, very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. It's really the only channel that I'm active on in terms of social media. So LinkedIn is the place to find me, Michèle Soregaroli, and certainly through our website, transformationcatalyst.ca.
And so Soregaroli, folks, and it's Michelle, Michele, one L.
Yes, yes, thank you,
Soregaroli
Soregaroli.
is Soregaroli. And so again, Michele Soregaroli. I suspect there's not 50,000 of you on LinkedIn.
There's only one that
just,
I'm
just,
aware of.
just due to the unique spelling.
Sorgaroli in itself is a unique name, so certainly in North America. But thank you. Yeah.
The reason I do this, Michelle, is because if somebody's driving down the road, pulled over, right? I
Right.
I know myself, even the quick starts in the world,
Yes.
right? We're like, oh, I got to do this, and then if we don't do it right now, and
Hmm.
folks, this is your cue. Do it right now. If you don't do it right now, then you have the best intention to come back, but 40,000 things are going to hit you over the next 6 weeks. And you're just going to like, it'll start to a trit off, right? So,
Hmm.
Michelle, I really appreciate you being here and super, super grateful you're bringing your A+++ game on this. Um, I think I want to have you back if you're cool with that, because I think there's so much more we can dig into. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm doing that in front of 1.8 million people right now. So no pressure, no pressure. Um,
I would love any opportunity to connect with you and chat. Doug, we always have fun together, so thank
all
you.
right, awesome. Well, thanks for being here again on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, folks. Check it out at transformationcatalyst.ca or Michelle, Michele, Soregaroli, Soregaroli on LinkedIn. Thanks for being here again. All right, everyone. If your clients are happy, but your margins just aren't where you want them to be, let's say they're stagnant and you have a value gap that is quietly gutting your company's exit value. In a market today where identity and convenience now outrank price, failing to see what your buyer actually values is a massive operational and sales leak. What's the return on investment they're looking for on the business side and the personal side? Now, this is exactly why I offer our CEO Sales Strategy Diagnostic, where we identify hidden revenue, find the 15 to 25% of profit, yes, profit, sitting there, and revenue dormant in your mismatched messaging and stalled close rates. Stop guessing why you're being treated like a commodity, folks, and start co-creating high margin results that drive a 10x valuation for you above and beyond where you are today. So reach out to me at Doug at CEOsalesstrategies.com and let's do a diagnostic and find that hidden cash for you today. You've already paid the money to bring it into your company. It's sitting idle in your company and not in your bank account. I'm Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Now go find your value to your success.